I sat at my parents' Thanksgiving dinner table, the smell of roasted turkey filling the air, when my father cleared his throat and said the words that would change everything. He looked directly at me and announced that my financial contributions to the family were no longer needed or wanted. My mother nodded in agreement, her eyes cold as she stated that nobody actually needed me around anymore. My younger sister Jessica smirked from across the table and added that they had all been doing just fine without my help anyway. The entire family stared at me, waiting for my reaction. I simply smiled, set down my fork, and said nothing. Inside, something shifted. A plan began forming in my mind. Let me back up and explain how I got to that moment. My name is Cody, and I am a 32-year-old software engineer living in Seattle, Washington. For the past 8 years, I had been the family success story, the one who made it out and built a career that paid well. I worked for a mid-sized tech company as a senior developer, pulling in a comfortable 6-figure salary that allowed me to live comfortably and still have plenty left over. But I did not keep all that money for myself. For 8 years, I had been sending substantial amounts back home to Phoenix, Arizona, where my parents still lived in the same 3-bedroom house where Jessica and I grew up. Every month, like clockwork, I sent $1,200 to cover their mortgage payment. My father, Daniel, had diabetes and high blood pressure, and his medications and doctor visits added up quickly. I covered those bills too, usually another $600 to $800 monthly. On top of that, I sent money for household expenses, car repairs, emergency funds, whatever they needed. I did the math once during a slow afternoon at work. Over 8 years, I had sent my parents approximately $35,000 per year. That came to $280,000, not counting the extra gifts at Christmas and birthdays, or the times I flew them out to visit me in Seattle and paid for everything. And then there was Jessica. My sister was 26 now, 4 years younger than me, and she had graduated from Arizona State University 3 years ago with a degree in communications. I paid for that degree. Every single cent. Tuition, room and board, books, spending money. $48,000 over 4 years, so she could graduate without a penny of student debt. I remembered how grateful she seemed at graduation, hugging me tight and saying I was the best brother in the world. After college, Jessica moved back in with our parents. She worked as a social media manager for a small marketing firm in Scottsdale, making decent money but not enough to afford her own place, she claimed. My parents did not charge her rent. I even paid her car insurance for the first 3 years after graduation, another couple $1,000s that I never thought twice about giving. I flew into Phoenix the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, bringing 3 bottles of expensive wine and carefully chosen gifts for everyone. A cashmere scarf for my mother, a new watch for my father, and a leather handbag Jessica had mentioned wanting in a text message 2 months earlier. The moment I walked through the door, something felt off. The warmth I usually felt coming home was missing, replaced by a chill that had nothing to do with the Arizona weather. My mother gave me a brief, stiff hug and immediately returned to the kitchen. My father barely looked up from the football game on television, grunting a hello in my direction. Jessica sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, and when I tried to strike up a conversation about her work, she rolled her eyes and said she was busy. I tried to shake off the weird energy. Maybe everyone was just stressed about the holidays. Maybe I was reading too much into things. I helped my mother prepare side dishes, set the table, and did my best to create the warm family atmosphere I remembered from years past. Thanksgiving dinner started normally enough. We sat down. My father said a quick grace, and we began passing dishes around the table. The turkey was perfect, the stuffing savory, the cranberry sauce tart and sweet. But the conversation was stilted, awkward. Every topic I brought up got one-word answers or uncomfortable silences. Then, about 20 minutes into the meal, my father set down his fork with a loud clank against his plate. He cleared his throat, and everyone stopped eating. My mother straightened in her chair. Jessica put down her phone for the first time all evening. My father looked at me and said, "Cody, We need to talk about the money situation. I nodded, assuming they needed help with something. Maybe the furnace had broken or the car needed major repairs. I was mentally calculating how much I could send without straining my own budget. But that was not what he meant at all. Your mother and I have been talking, he continued, his voice formal and distant. We have decided that we do not need your financial support anymore. We are doing fine on our own. And frankly, it makes us feel like failures, like we cannot take care of ourselves. I blinked, confused. Dad, I never meant to make you feel that way. I just wanted to help. My mother cut me off. We know what you meant, Cody. But it is time for it to stop. We are not your charity case. We do not need you to swoop in and save us every month. Jessica leaned back in her chair, a satisfied smile on her face. Honestly, Cody, you have always acted like you are better than us because you have money. It is exhausting. We have been talking about this for months. My chest tightened. I have never thought I was better than anyone. I love you all. I just wanted to make life easier. Well, we do not want it anymore, my father said firmly. Stop sending the checks. Stop paying bills. Stop acting like our savior. We are done. The room fell silent except for the sound of the television in the other room, where a football announcer was excitedly calling a touchdown. My mother would not look at me. Jessica smirked into her wine glass. My father went back to eating as if he had just commented on the weather. I sat there, fork suspended halfway to my mouth, trying to process what had just happened. 8 years of support, hundreds of thousands of dollars, countless sacrifices to my own savings and retirement accounts, and this was the thank you I received. Not just a request to stop helping, but an accusation that I had been making them feel inferior the whole time. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out under the table and glanced at the screen. A text from my cousin Marcus, who lived in Tempe and had not been invited to this particular dinner. Dude, you need to know something. Jessica's been telling everyone you've been lording your money over the family and making them feel worthless. She convinced your parents to cut you off. She's got a new boyfriend who's loaded, and she wants them to look to him instead. I'm sorry, man. I read the message twice, my mind racing. I looked up at Jessica, who was now chatting casually with my mother about some television show, acting as if nothing monumental had just happened. I looked at my parents, who seemed relieved, as if they had just gotten a weight off their shoulders. I set my phone face down on the table. I finished chewing the bite of turkey in my mouth. I took a sip of water, and then I smiled. Okay, I said simply. If that is what you want. My mother looked surprised, as if she had expected me to argue or beg. My father nodded approvingly. Jessica looked almost disappointed that I had not put up a fight. I excused myself early, claiming I was tired from the flight. I hugged my mother, shook my father's hand, and gave Jessica a pat on the shoulder. Then I drove to my hotel, my mind already 3 steps ahead, planning what I would do next. I did not fly back to Seattle the next day like I had originally planned. Instead, I extended my hotel reservation and told my family I had unexpected work meetings in Phoenix. It was a lie, but I needed time to understand what was really happening. The morning after Thanksgiving, I called Marcus and asked if he could meet me for coffee. He agreed immediately, and we met at a small cafe in Scottsdale, far enough from my parents' neighborhood that we would not run into anyone. Marcus was 29, a graphic designer with a laid-back personality and a tendency to know everyone's business. He had always been the family member I trusted most, the one who told the truth even when it was uncomfortable. He slid into the booth across from me, his expression sympathetic. I figured you would reach out after last night. Tell me everything, I said. Marcus sighed and pulled out his phone, scrolling through what looked like screenshots of text messages. Jessica started dating this guy about 4 months ago. His name is Brandon. He is 35, works in real estate development, drives a Tesla, and basically flashes money around everywhere he goes. He showed me a photo from Jessica's social media. Brandon was tall, tan, with perfectly styled hair, and a watch that probably cost more than my monthly rent. In the photo, he had his arm around Jessica at some upscale restaurant, both of them holding cocktails and grinning at the camera. Jessica started bringing him around to family stuff, Marcus continued. Small gatherings, Sunday dinners, that kind of thing. Stuff you were not invited to, by the way. She has been talking him up to your parents constantly. How successful he is, how generous, how he treats her like a queen. And they just accepted this guy? I asked. More than that. She has been actively working to push you out. She started making comments about how you use money to control them, how you make them feel like they owe you, how they will never be good enough in your eyes. She said you judge them for not being as successful as you. I felt my jaw tighten. I have never said anything like that. I know, man. But she is convincing. And your parents wanted to believe her because it gave them permission to feel resentful instead of grateful. It is easier to be angry than to feel indebted. Marcus showed me more screenshots. Text messages from Jessica to other family members, talking about how she was going to make sure Brandon became the new golden child, how their parents would finally see her as the successful one, how she was tired of living in my shadow. She has been planning this for months, Marcus said. This was not spontaneous. She orchestrated the whole thing. I sat back in the booth, staring at my coffee. Everything made sense now. The coldness when I arrived, the coordinated confrontation at dinner, the smug look on Jessica's face when I did not fight back. "What are you going to do?" Marcus asked. "I do not know yet," I said. But that was not entirely true. I had some ideas forming. Over the next 3 days, I stayed in Phoenix and did research. I did not contact my family. I did not try to defend myself or explain my side. I simply gathered information. I logged into my bank account and pulled up 8 years of transactions. Every wire transfer, every check, every automatic payment. I created a spreadsheet, documenting everything. The mortgage payments totaling over $115,000. The medical bills totaling $47,000. The miscellaneous expenses, emergency funds, car repairs, and random help adding up to another $60,000. Then Jessica's college tuition and expenses, and the $10,000 I had given her 2 years ago when she said she wanted to invest in starting her own social media consulting business, a business that never materialized. Grand total, over $450,000 in 8 years. I also hired a private investigator. It cost me $1,500, but I needed to know more about Brandon. Who was he really? Was he actually wealthy, or was this all a show? The investigator promised me a full report within 5 days. On Saturday afternoon, I drove past my parents' house. Brandon's black Tesla was parked in the driveway. I parked down the street, far enough away that no one would notice my rental car, and I watched. About 20 minutes later, the front door opened. Brandon stepped out first, laughing at something someone inside had said. Then Jessica appeared, hanging on his arm. My parents followed them onto the porch. My mother was smiling wider than I had seen in years. She gave Brandon a warm hug, the kind of hug she had barely given me when I arrived for Thanksgiving. My father clapped Brandon on the back like he was already part of the family, like he was the son my father had always wanted. They stood on the porch for another 10 minutes, talking and laughing. Jessica looked radiant, basking in the attention. Brandon was charming, animated, telling some story that had everyone entertained. When they finally said goodbye, and Brandon helped Jessica into his car, my parents stood on the porch, waving until the Tesla disappeared down the street. I sat in my rental car, gripping the steering wheel, watching my parents go back inside their house, the house I had been paying for, where they lived in comfort because of my contributions. And they had just replaced me with a stranger in an expensive car. That night, Marcus called me with more information. I talked to my friend who works at the real estate office where Brandon claims to work. He does work there, but he is not some hotshot developer. He is a sales agent, and not even a particularly successful one. The Tesla is leased, not owned. And get this, he is married. What? Married. 2 kids. Lives in Scottsdale with his wife and family. I have seen the photos. He is running some kind of game on Jessica. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt sick for my sister, even though she had orchestrated my exile. But mostly, I felt clear about what I needed to do. I called my lawyer in Seattle and explained the situation. I told him I wanted to cut off all financial support to my family immediately and make sure I was legally protected from any claims they might make. He walked me through the process. On Sunday morning, I went to my bank and canceled every automatic payment scheduled for my parents. The mortgage payment that was set to process on the 1st of the month. The automatic transfer for household expenses. The alert I had set up to monitor my father's medical account, so I could pay bills as they came in. I contacted the university where Jessica had graduated and requested documentation that I had paid her tuition in full. They sent me an official letter confirming the payment history. I called the car insurance company and removed myself from Jessica's policy. She was an adult with a job. She could pay her own insurance. I went to the hospital, where my father received most of his medical care, and removed myself as his emergency contact and guarantor on his accounts. I updated all the paperwork to show that he was responsible for his own bills. Finally, I went to the bank where I had set up a joint savings account with my parents years ago, an account meant for family emergencies. It contained $18,000, every penny of which I had contributed. I closed the account and transferred the money to my personal savings. By Sunday evening, I had erased myself from their financial lives completely. Every connection severed, every automatic payment canceled, every responsibility lifted. I sat in my hotel room and composed a single text message to the family group chat. I respect your decision. You won't hear from me again. I wish you all the best. Then I blocked my mother's number. I blocked my father's number. I blocked Jessica's number. I left one email address active, a secondary account I rarely used, just in case there was ever a true emergency. I flew back to Seattle on Monday morning. The first week back in Seattle, I threw myself into work with an intensity that surprised even me. I volunteered for the projects no one else wanted, stayed late at the office, and took on extra responsibilities. My manager noticed and appreciated it. My coworkers joked that I had become a machine, but really, I just needed the distraction. I needed to focus on something I could control, something where effort translated directly into results. Family was messy and unpredictable. Code was logical and clean. My phone buzzed constantly with attempted calls from my mother's number, but they never went through. She tried calling 23 times in the first 3 days. Then the calls stopped. I assumed she figured out I had blocked her. Jessica tried texting from her number, but those messages disappeared into the void, too. My father sent one email to the address I had left active. The subject line was, "Do not be dramatic." The body of the email was brief. "Cody, you are overreacting. We just wanted some independence. There is no reason to cut us off completely. Call your mother." I did not respond. Instead, I focused on building a life that did not revolve around being the family ATM. I started seeing a therapist, a woman named Dr. Patricia Chen, who specialized in family dynamics and boundaries. In our first session, I told her everything. She listened without judgment, and then asked me a question that hit hard. "What were you getting out of the arrangement?" she asked. I had to think about that. I was helping people I love. Yes. But what else? What need of yours was being met? I sat with that question for a long time. Finally, I admitted. I felt needed, important, like I mattered. And now? Now, I feel disposable. Dr. Chen nodded. "We are going to work on separating your worth from your usefulness. You are valuable because you exist, not because of what you can provide. Over the next several weeks, I worked on that concept. It was harder than I expected. I also started dating again. I had been so focused on work and family obligations that my social life had withered. Through a friend at work, I met a woman named Harper who worked in environmental law. She was smart, funny, passionate about her work, and had no patience for people who played games. We went on our first date in early December, a simple dinner at an Italian restaurant in Capitol Hill. "Tell me about your family," she said over pasta. I gave her the abbreviated version. She listened, and then said something that surprised me. "Good for you for setting boundaries. That takes courage. You do not think I am being cruel? Cruel would be holding their past support over their heads forever. You gave freely. They rejected it harshly, and you removed yourself from a toxic dynamic. That is healthy, not cruel." I had not thought about it that way. At work, my dedication paid off. In mid-December, my manager called me into her office and offered me a promotion to senior architect, a role that came with a significant raise and more responsibility. I accepted immediately. The raise alone was an extra $30,000 per year, money that would now stay in my own accounts, building my own future. I joined a hiking group that met every Saturday morning. We would drive out to the Cascades or Olympic Peninsula and spend the day on the trails. I made friends who knew nothing about my family situation, who liked me for who I was, not for what I could provide. Christmas came and went. I spent it with Harper and some friends, a low-key gathering with good food and better conversation. I did not think about my family opening presents in Phoenix without me. Or at least, I tried not to. 2 months after Thanksgiving, I felt like I was genuinely healing. The anger had faded into something more like acceptance. I had made peace with the idea that some relationships were not meant to last, even family ones. Then, on a Tuesday morning in late January, I received an email at the emergency address I had left active. The sender was Phoenix General Hospital. The subject line read, "Outstanding balance dash, immediate payment required." My hands went cold as I opened it. The email explained that my father had been admitted to the hospital 5 days earlier with a diabetic emergency. His blood sugar had spiked dangerously high, and he had been unresponsive when my mother found him on the bathroom floor. He spent 5 days in the intensive care unit before being transferred to a regular room, and then discharged. The total bill was $62,000. Insurance had covered some of it, but there was still an outstanding balance of $28,000. The hospital was threatening to send the account to collections if payment arrangements were not made immediately. They were contacting me because, according to their records, I was still listed as the guarantor on my father's account. Apparently, my father had never updated the paperwork after I removed myself as the emergency contact. The financial guarantee was a separate form, one that required his signature to change, and he had never bothered to do it. The email asked me to contact their billing department as soon as possible. I sat at my desk, staring at my computer screen, feeling a mix of emotions I could not quite name. Vindication that their perfect plan with Brandon had obviously fallen apart. Anger that they only contacted me when they needed money. Worry about my father's health. And underneath it all, a bone-deep exhaustion at the thought of being pulled back into their chaos. I did not respond to the email immediately. I needed time to think. That evening, I told Harper about it over dinner at her apartment. She had made vegetarian chili, and we sat on her couch with bowls in our laps. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I do not know. Part of me wants to ignore it. They made their choice. They have to live with the consequences. And the other part? The other part remembers that he is still my father. That diabetes is a serious condition. That $28,000 in collections could destroy their credit and their lives." Harper was quiet for a moment. "There is no wrong answer here, Cody. Whatever you decide is valid. But ask yourself this: what decision will you be able to live with in 5 years, 10 years? I thought about that question for a long time. 3 days after receiving the hospital email, I got another message. This one was from my mother, sent to the emergency email address. The subject line was simple: "Please call us." The body of the email was even simpler: "Cody, we need to talk about your father's hospital bill. Please call as soon as you can." No apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened at Thanksgiving. Just a straightforward request for contact because they needed something. I did not respond immediately. I waited 3 more days, letting them sit with the silence, letting them wonder if I would help or if I had truly moved on. On Saturday morning, after my hike, I finally replied. My email was brief. "I was told you didn't need my money, or me." What changed? 20 minutes later, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, not one I had blocked. I answered cautiously. "Cody?" Oh, thank God. It was my mother's voice, calling from what I assumed was a neighbor's phone. She was crying. "Cody, please, we need to talk." "I am listening," I said, my voice neutral. "Your father's in trouble. The hospital bill. We cannot pay it. They are threatening collections. His credit will be ruined. We will never be able to get a loan or a credit card or anything. Please, we need your help." "Where is Brandon?" I asked. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then my mother's voice came back, smaller, defeated. "He is gone." "Gone?" "He stopped coming around about 6 weeks ago. Jessica tried calling him, texting him. He blocked her. She drove to his office, and they told her he does not work there anymore. She found out he is married. He has a wife and 2 kids in Scottsdale. He was using her the whole time." I closed my eyes, not finding any satisfaction in being right. "I am sorry Jessica got hurt. She is devastated. She has not left her room in weeks. She lost her job too." "What happened?" "She was spending too much time on her personal social media during work hours. They gave her warnings, but she did not listen. They fired her 5 weeks ago. She has been applying for jobs, but nothing has come through yet." My mother was crying harder now. "Cody, I know we messed up. I know what we said at Thanksgiving was wrong. Jessica told us things about you that made us believe you were being controlling, but we see now that she was manipulating us. We should have known better. We should have trusted you. But you did not," I said quietly. "No, we did not. And I am so sorry." I waited, letting her sit with that apology. Then I asked, "What is your financial situation right now?" My mother took a shaky breath. "It is bad. Without your mortgage payments, we have fallen 3 months behind. The bank sent us a foreclosure notice last week. They are starting the process. We could lose the house." "What about your other bills?" "The electric company shut off our power for 4 days last month, until we could scrape together enough for a partial payment. Your father's medications cost $800 a month. We have been having him skip doses to save money. That is why he ended up in the hospital. His blood sugar got out of control." I felt my chest tighten. Despite everything, the thought of my father rationing his medication because they could not afford it made me feel sick. "How much money do you have right now?" I asked. $73 in checking. Our credit cards are maxed out. We have nothing. And Jessica? She has no savings. She spent everything she made on clothes and trips with Brandon. She cannot help us." I stood up from my couch and walked to the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. It would be so easy to just help, to wire them money and solve the immediate crisis. That was my instinct, my default setting. But Dr. Chen's voice echoed in my head. "You cannot save people who do not want to be saved. And you cannot light yourself on fire to keep others warm." "I will think about it," I told my mother. "Cody, please. We do not have time. The hospital is threatening collections next week." I said I will think about it. "I will call you back in a few days." I hung up before she could protest. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about my father lying on the bathroom floor, about my mother finding him unresponsive, about how scared they must have been. Despite everything they had said and done, they were still my parents. But I also thought about the 8 years of support that had been met with accusations and rejection. I thought about Jessica's calculated campaign to replace me. I thought about how quickly they had turned on me when someone flashier came along. On Monday, I received the report from the private investigator I had hired back in November. It was thorough and damning. Brandon Taylor was indeed married, with a wife named Stephanie and 2 children, ages 7 and 5. He had been running a similar scam on at least 4 other families in the Phoenix area over the past 3 years. He would target women from middle-class families, flash money around, get close to the family, extract whatever he could get, and then disappear. Sometimes it was direct financial contributions. Sometimes it was business investments that never materialized. Sometimes it was just the ego boost of having multiple families treating him like a big shot. The PI had even found a police report from 2 years ago where one family had tried to press charges, but there was not enough evidence for fraud. Brandon was careful. He never explicitly promised anything. He just created an illusion of wealth and let people's assumptions do the rest. But the report contained something else. An archived blog post from 6 months ago, written by someone named Jessica Life 87. I recognized my sister's online handle immediately. The post was titled, "How to Get Your Family to Appreciate You More." In it, Jessica detailed a step-by-step plan for repositioning yourself as the successful child in your family. She talked about finding someone impressive to date, strategically bringing them around family, creating contrast with the sibling who had previously been seen as the golden child, and slowly planting seeds of doubt about that sibling's motives. She had literally written out her plan to exile me, and she had published it online for anyone to read. I forwarded the entire PI report to my lawyer and asked him what my options were. He called me back within an hour. "Cody, you have every right to walk away from this situation entirely. You have no legal obligation to help them. The hospital guarantee is questionable since you tried to remove yourself from the account. We could fight it. But fighting it would cost you time, stress, and probably more money than just paying it. So what do you recommend? That depends on what you want. Do you want to be done with your family forever? Or do you want to help them while protecting yourself?" I thought about Harper's question. What decision could I live with in 5 years? 10 years? "I want to help them," I said slowly. "But I want accountability this time. Real change, not just promises." "Then we draft conditions," my lawyer said, "and we make them legally binding." Over the next 2 days, my lawyer and I worked out a detailed plan. It was not about revenge. It was about creating a structure that would force real change while protecting me from being taken advantage of again. On Wednesday evening, I booked a flight to Phoenix. I did not tell anyone I was coming. I landed in Phoenix on Thursday afternoon, rented a car, and drove straight to my parents' house. It was just after 5 in the evening when I pulled up to the curb. The house looked worse than I remembered. The lawn was overgrown, brown in patches from neglect. One of the shutters hung crooked. The paint on the front door was peeling. These were the kinds of things I would have paid to fix immediately if I had still been involved. Now they were visible evidence of the financial strain my family was under. I knocked on the door. My mother answered, her eyes widening in shock when she saw me. "Cody? You did not say you were coming." "I wanted to handle this in person," I said. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside, and I walked into the living room. It was dark. The blinds were closed, and only one lamp was on, probably to save money on the electric bill. My father sat in his recliner, looking thinner and more frail than I remembered. The hospital stay had clearly taken a toll on him. Jessica was there too, curled up on the couch in sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, her hair unwashed and pulled into a messy bun. She looked up when I entered, her expression a mix of shame and defiance. "We need to talk," I said. "All of us." I set my laptop bag on the coffee table and pulled out a folder full of documents I had printed at the hotel business center that morning. Bank statements, payment records, the PI report, Jessica's blog post. Everything. Before we discuss the hospital bill or any kind of help, I need you to understand exactly what has happened over the past 8 years, I said. I spread the bank statements across the coffee table, page after page of highlighted transactions. This is every dollar I sent you. Mortgage payments totaling $115,000. Medical bills, $47,000. Miscellaneous expenses and emergency funds, $60,000. Jessica's college tuition and expenses, $48,000. The $10,000 for her business that never happened. Grand total, over $450,000 in 8 years. My mother's hand went to her mouth. My father stared at the papers, his jaw working but no words coming out. Jessica looked away. I never asked you to repay me, I continued. I never held it over your heads. I helped because I love you and because I could. And in return, you told me I made you feel like failures. You accused me of being controlling. You rejected me publicly and humiliatingly. I pulled out the printed pages of Jessica's blog post and set them on top of the bank statements. But it was not really about that, was it? Jessica, you planned this whole thing. You wrote about it online. You manipulated our parents into pushing me away so you could position yourself as the successful child. Jessica's face went red. I did not mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? Explain it to me. She opened her mouth, closed it, then burst into tears. I was jealous, okay? You were always the smart one, the successful one, the one they bragged about to everyone. I wanted to be important too. I wanted them to see me as valuable. So you destroyed our relationship to feel valuable? I thought Brandon was real. I thought I had found someone who could give them what you gave them, and then they would see that I could take care of them too. I did not know he was married. I did not know he was using me. I turned to my parents. And you believed her. You believed that I, your son, who had been helping you for 8 years, was somehow the bad guy. You did not even ask for my side of the story. You just cut me off. My father finally spoke, his voice rough. We were fools. We let pride get in the way. Your mother and I, we did feel like failures every time you sent money. Not because you made us feel that way, but because we felt that way about ourselves. When Jessica gave us a different narrative, one where we were the victims instead of the recipients, it was easier to accept. And now? I asked. Now we see that we made a terrible mistake, my mother said, wiping her eyes. Cody, you have every right to walk away and never look back. What we did was unforgivable. I sat down in the chair across from them, pulling out the last document from my folder. I am not going to walk away, but I am also not going to go back to the way things were. If I am going to help, it is going to be different this time. There will be conditions, and they will be legally binding. I slid the document across the coffee table. It was a contract my lawyer had drafted. These are my terms, I said. First, we all attend family therapy together. Minimum 12 sessions with a licensed counselor. This is not optional. If you want my help, you commit to working on our relationship in a structured setting. My mother nodded immediately. Yes, absolutely. Second, Jessica, you need to get a job. Any job. Within 2 weeks. Fast food, retail, whatever you can find. You need to be contributing to this household if you are going to continue living here. Jessica looked like she wanted to argue, but she just nodded. Third, Mom and Dad, you need to create a written budget and stick to it. I will help you set it up, but you have to manage it. No more living beyond your means. We can do that, my father said. Fourth, you need to publicly acknowledge what happened. Not to the whole world, but to our extended family. I want Marcus, Aunt Linda, Uncle George, everyone who heard Jessica's version of events, to hear the truth. You tell them that you were wrong, and that I was not the villain Jessica painted me as. My mother looked uncomfortable, but nodded. Okay. Fifth, each of you will write me a letter of apology. Not an email, not a text. A handwritten letter where you explain what you did, why it was wrong, and what you are going to do differently. I do not want empty words. I want thoughtful reflection. We will do it, my father said. Sixth, I will pay the immediate hospital bill and 3 months of mortgage to prevent foreclosure. That is $28,000 for the hospital and $3,600 for the mortgage. Just over $31,000. But after that, you are on your own financially unless you can prove lasting change. I looked at each of them in turn. These conditions are not negotiable. You accept all of them, or I walk away right now, and you figure out the hospital bill and foreclosure on your own. What is it going to be? There was a long silence. Jessica spoke first, her voice small. You are being really controlling right now. I turned to her, keeping my voice level. No, Jessica. Controlling would be using money to dictate your choices. This is me setting clear boundaries about what I am willing to participate in. You can accept these terms or not. That is your choice. But you do not get to call me controlling for protecting myself. My father cleared his throat. She is right to be upset, Cody. These terms are harsh. Dad, you have a $28,000 hospital bill that you cannot pay. You are 3 months behind on your mortgage and facing foreclosure. Your credit cards are maxed out. You have $73 in your bank account. I am offering you a lifeline with conditions that protect both of us. If you think you have a better option, I encourage you to take it. My parents looked at each other, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, my mother spoke. We accept your terms. All of them. Jessica? I asked. She wiped her tears and nodded. Fine. I accept. I pulled out a pen and slid the contract toward them. Then sign. One by one, they signed the document. I signed last. Then put the contract back in my folder. I will wire the money for the hospital bill and mortgage tomorrow, I said. You have 2 weeks to find a therapist and schedule our first session. Jessica, you have 2 weeks to get a job. I will be checking in weekly. I stood up to leave, emotionally exhausted from the confrontation. As I reached the door, my father called out to me, Cody, wait. There is something else you should know. I turned back. My father looked ashamed, his hands clasped in his lap. 6 months ago, Jessica convinced us to take out a home equity loan. She said it was for house repairs. The roof was leaking, the air conditioner was old. She made it sound urgent. We borrowed $30,000. My stomach dropped. Let me guess. There were no house repairs. My father shook his head. She used the money to invest in one of Brandon's real estate deals. He promised she would double her money in 6 months. Obviously, that never happened. The money is gone. And now we owe the bank an additional $30,000 on top of the mortgage. I looked at Jessica, who had her face buried in her hands. I looked at my parents, who could not meet my eyes, and I felt the full weight of just how deep this mess really went. The foreclosure is not just about missed payments, is it? I asked quietly. It is about this loan, too. We cannot pay it back, my mother whispered. We have been trying, but with the mortgage and the regular bills and your father's medications, we just cannot do it. I stood in the doorway, calculating quickly. The original deal I had just made would cover the immediate hospital bill and get them current on the mortgage. But this additional $30,000 loan changed everything. They were not just behind. They were drowning in debt with no way out. I could walk away. The contract I had just made them sign did not include this loan. I had not known about it when I drafted the terms. I would be completely justified in saying this was beyond what I had agreed to help with. But if I walked away now, they would lose the house within months. All the money I had already put in over 8 years would be wasted, and my father's health was fragile enough that the stress of losing their home might kill him. "I need to think about this," I said. "I will call you in 2 days." I left the house and drove back to my hotel, my mind racing with possibilities and calculations, and the crushing realization that this situation was even worse than I had thought. I did not sleep that night. I sat in my hotel room, running numbers over and over on my laptop, trying to figure out how to solve this without destroying my own financial future. The hospital bill, $28,000. 3 months of mortgage, $3,600. The home equity loan, $30,000. Total, just over $61,000. That was more than I had in my savings account. I would have to pull from my retirement fund, which would trigger penalties and taxes, or I could take out a personal loan myself, but that seemed insane. Why should I go into debt to fix my family's mistakes? I called Dr. Chen, my therapist, even though it was late. She answered, her voice calm and professional. "I am sorry to call so late," I said, "but I need help thinking through something." She listened as I explained the situation. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Cody, let me ask you a question. If you pay this money and it does not change anything, if they fall back into the same patterns, how will you feel?" "Devastated, angry, like I wasted everything. And if you do not pay it, and they lose their home and your father's health gets worse, how will you feel?" "Guilty, responsible, like I abandoned them when they needed me most. So either choice has significant emotional consequences for you." "Yes." "Then this is not really about the money, is it? It is about what kind of person you want to be and what kind of relationship you want with your family going forward." I had not thought about it that way. "If you help them," Dr. Chen continued, "it cannot be because you feel obligated or guilty. It has to be because you have made a conscious choice that aligns with your values, and you have protected yourself with clear boundaries." "The boundaries did not work the first time," I said. "That is because the boundaries were not enforced. They were not real. This time, if you help, the boundaries have to have teeth, consequences that actually happen if they are violated." We talked for another hour, working through options. By the time I hung up, I had a plan. It was not perfect, but it was the best I could do. The next morning, I called my lawyer and explained the new situation. He drafted an amended agreement, much more detailed and legally binding than the first contract. On Saturday, I returned to my parents' house with the new paperwork. "Here is what I am willing to do," I said, laying out the terms. "I will pay off the hospital bill in full. I will pay off the home equity loan in full. I will bring your mortgage current for 3 months. Total cost to me, $1,600. My parents looked relieved, but I held up my hand. "But in exchange, you will sell this house within 6 months. "What?" My mother looked shocked. "You cannot afford this house. You never could, not without my help. You need to downsize to something realistic for your actual income. You will sell the house, and whatever equity is left after paying off the remaining mortgage will go into a trust that I control." "A trust?" my father asked. "Yes. I will set up a trust that pays you a monthly stipend of $1,200. That is what your budget should be based on. You cannot access the principal. If you violate the terms of our agreement, the trust dissolves and you get nothing." "Cody, this house is our home," my mother said. "We raised you and Jessica here, and you took out a loan against it to fund Jessica's fake boyfriend's fake real estate deal. You proved that you cannot manage a valuable asset responsibly. I am not letting you lose it to more bad decisions." I turned to Jessica. "And you? You owe me $10,000 from that business investment that never happened. $200 per month for 50 months. If you miss a payment, the full balance is due immediately. You also owe Mom and Dad $500 per month toward the home equity loan loss. You created that debt. You have to pay for it." "I do not even have a job yet," Jessica protested. "Then you better find one fast. You have 13 days left on your 2-week deadline. I slid the amended contract across the table. These are the new terms. All the previous conditions still apply. Therapy, budgeting, public acknowledgement, written apologies, plus the house sale, the trust, and Jessica's repayment plan. Sign it or I walk away right now. My father looked angry. You are treating us like children. No, Dad. I am treating you like adults who made very poor decisions and now have to face consequences. Children get bailed out with no strings attached. Adults get help with accountability. My mother started crying again. We do not have a choice, do we? You always have a choice. You can refuse my help and figure this out on your own. File for bankruptcy, let the house go into foreclosure, whatever you need to do. But if you want my help, these are the terms. They signed. Jessica signed. I signed. My lawyer would file the documents on Monday. I wired the hospital payment that afternoon. I paid off the home equity loan on Monday. I brought the mortgage current on Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, my savings account was down to $11,000, the smallest it had been since I was 25. But the work was just beginning. The first family therapy session was scheduled for the following Saturday. I flew back to Phoenix for it. We met with a therapist named Dr. Robert Martinez, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach. The first session was brutal. Dr. Martinez asked each of us to explain our perspective on what had happened. Jessica admitted she had been jealous of me her entire life. She talked about how our parents had always compared us, always held me up as the example she should follow. She said she felt invisible, like nothing she did was ever good enough. My parents admitted they had enabled her jealousy. My father talked about how he had constantly asked Jessica why she could not be more like me, why she could not get grades like mine or a job like mine. My mother admitted she had dismissed Jessica's accomplishments because they were not as financially impressive as mine. When it was my turn, I talked about how I had used financial support as a way to feel connected to my family. I had been so focused on being helpful that I had not noticed how it was creating resentment, but I also talked about the deep hurt of being rejected, of having 8 years of love and support thrown back in my face. Dr. Martinez listened to all of it, and then said something that stuck with me. Every person in this room was trying to meet a need in an unhealthy way. Cody used money to feel valuable. Jessica used manipulation to feel seen. The parents used Brandon as permission to stop feeling indebted. Nobody was being honest about what they really needed: connection, acknowledgement, and respect. Over the next several weeks, we worked on those things. It was slow, uncomfortable, often painful. There were sessions where people yelled, sessions where people cried, sessions where we sat in silence because no one knew what to say. But gradually, things started to shift. Jessica got a job as a barista at a local coffee shop. It was not glamorous, but she showed up on time, worked hard, and was promoted to shift supervisor within 2 months. She started making her payments to me, $200, deposited into my account, like clockwork, on the 1st of every month. My parents created a budget with help from a financial counselor I connected them with. They cut unnecessary expenses, learned to cook at home instead of ordering takeout, and started tracking every dollar. They listed their house in April. It sold in 6 weeks, a quick sale in the hot Phoenix market. After paying off the remaining mortgage and closing costs, they netted $87,000. I put it in the trust, as promised. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment that cost $900 per month. It was smaller, less impressive than the house they had owned for 30 years. But it was manageable on their income, and they did not have to rely on me to afford it. The extended family was informed about what had really happened. Marcus helped spread the word, and my parents made calls to aunts, uncles, and cousins to set the record straight. Some family members were shocked. Some were angry at Jessica. Some were disappointed in my parents. But the truth was finally out there. And then, one by one, the letters arrived. My mother's letter was 3 pages long, handwritten on stationery that had belonged to her own mother. She detailed specific moments where she had taken my generosity for granted. She apologized for believing Jessica's lies without asking me for my side. She wrote about how ashamed she felt, how she did not deserve my forgiveness but hoped for it anyway. She ended the letter with, "You are my son, and I love you, not for what you can give us, but for who you are." My father's letter was shorter but no less impactful. He admitted that he had favored me growing up, that he had used me as a weapon against Jessica, that he had taught her to be jealous by constantly comparing them. He wrote, "I failed both of you in different ways. I made you feel like you had to earn love through achievement, and I made her feel like she would never be good enough. I am sorry, son. I am working to be better." Jessica's letter was the most raw. She wrote about growing up in my shadow, about how every accomplishment of hers felt diminished because it was not as impressive as mine. She wrote about how her plan to replace me had been born from years of feeling invisible. But she also wrote about how losing Brandon and her job had been a wake-up call, how she was learning to build her own identity instead of trying to tear down mine. She ended with, "You are the best brother I never deserved. I am going to spend the rest of my life proving I can be better. I love you, Cody, and I am so, so sorry." I read those letters multiple times, sitting in my Seattle apartment, tears running down my face. They were not perfect. They did not erase the hurt, but they were real, honest attempts at accountability. 6 months after that terrible Thanksgiving dinner, I flew to Phoenix for a Sunday dinner at my parents' apartment. Harper came with me this time, meeting my family for the first time. The apartment was small but cozy. My mother had made pot roast, my favorite meal. My father looked healthier, his medications properly managed now. Jessica was there, in her coffee shop uniform because she had a shift later that evening. But she was smiling, relaxed, no longer glued to her phone. We sat around the small dining table, passing dishes and making conversation. It felt different than before, more honest, less performance. Harper fit in naturally, asking questions and laughing at my father's terrible jokes. During dessert, my father stood up and tapped his water glass with a spoon. "I want to say something," he announced. He looked at me, his eyes watering. "Cody, we failed you. We took your generosity and turned it into a burden. We let pride and manipulation destroy what mattered most. You had every right to walk away, but you did not. You gave us conditions, accountability, and a chance to do better. Thank you for not giving up on us," my mother added. "You taught us that love is not about money. It is about respect, honesty, and showing up even when it is hard." Jessica spoke quietly. "You are the best brother I never deserved. I am going to spend the rest of my life proving I can be better." I felt my throat tighten. I learned something too. I cannot save people who do not want to be saved, and I cannot let helping others destroy myself. I am glad we are here now, but we all had to change to make it happen. Harper squeezed my hand under the table. 6 more months passed. It was now a full year since that Thanksgiving dinner that had changed everything. My relationship with my family was not perfect, but it was real. I visited Phoenix about once a month, always on my terms, always with clear boundaries. My parents were managing their budget successfully, living within their means for the first time in decades. They had stopped looking at me as a source of money and started seeing me as their son again. Jessica had been promoted again at the coffee shop. She was now an assistant manager, making enough money to move into her own studio apartment. She was still making her monthly payments to me, never missing one. More importantly, she was building a life she was proud of, one that did not require comparing herself to me. She had started dating again, but this time she was more careful. The guy she was seeing, Marcus introduced them, worked as a teacher, and drove a 10-year-old Honda. He was kind, genuine, and treated her with respect. I met him during one of my visits, and he seemed like a good person. No Tesla, no flash, just solid and real. My father's health had stabilized. With his medications properly managed and regular doctor visits, his diabetes was under control. He had lost some weight, started walking in the mornings, and seemed to have more energy than he had in years. My mother had started a part-time job at a local library, something she enjoyed that brought in a little extra income and gave her a sense of purpose. The trust I had set up was working exactly as intended. It provided them with a stable monthly stipend, enough to supplement their income but not enough to make them dependent. They could not touch the principal, which meant they had security for the future without the temptation to make another disastrous financial decision. Harper and I had gotten serious. We talked about marriage, about buying a house together in Seattle, about building a life that was ours. She had become close with my family too, visiting Phoenix with me and hosting them when they came to Seattle. She had a way of seeing the good in people while still maintaining healthy boundaries, and she had taught me a lot about balance. One Sunday in late November, almost exactly a year after the Thanksgiving disaster, I accepted another invitation to dinner at my parents' apartment. This time it was not just my immediate family. Marcus was there, along with Aunt Linda and Uncle George, some cousins I had not seen in years. It was a real family gathering, the kind I remembered from childhood. The atmosphere was completely different from that nightmare dinner a year ago. People were laughing, sharing stories, genuinely enjoying each other's company. My mother had cooked a feast, and everyone had brought dishes to share. Jessica had made a dessert, a chocolate cake that was actually pretty good. During dinner, the conversation turned to the past year. Aunt Linda, who had heard the whole story, looked at me and said, "Cody, I have to say, what you did took a lot of courage. Not the money part, the boundary part. A lot of people would have just walked away or just given in. You found a third path." Uncle George nodded. "You taught all of us something about how to love people without enabling them." I felt uncomfortable with the praise. I just did what I thought was right. "No," my father said firmly. "You did more than that. You held us accountable. You demanded we do better. And you stuck around to help us actually change instead of just punishing us or abandoning us. That took strength." Jessica looked down at her plate, then met my eyes. "I have been thinking a lot about what happened, about what I did, and I realized something. I spent so much of my life resenting you for being successful that I never stopped to build my own success. I was so focused on tearing you down that I forgot to build myself up. And now?" I asked. "Now, I am building. Slowly. It is not glamorous. I am not making 6 figures or getting promotions every year, but I am proud of what I am doing. I am paying my own bills. I am making my payments to you on time. I am building something real. That is all any of us can do," I said. As dinner wound down and people started saying their goodbyes, I found myself on the apartment balcony with my father. The Phoenix sunset was spectacular, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I never thanked you properly," my father said quietly, "for the second chance. You did not need to. The changes you made were thanks enough. I mean it, though. Most kids would have just cut us off completely. We deserved that. But you gave us a way back. You made it hard. You made us work for it. But you left the door open." I thought about that for a moment. I left the door open because you are my family. But I also learned that love does not mean accepting bad treatment. It means expecting better and walking away if people are not willing to give it. My father nodded slowly. "That is a hard lesson, but an important one." We stood in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the sunset. "Are you happy, Cody?" my father asked. I thought about my life, my job, which challenged and fulfilled me, my relationship with Harper, which was built on honesty and mutual respect, my friendships in Seattle, which I had time to nurture now that I was not constantly managing family crises, and yes, my relationship with my family, which was smaller and more bounded, but also more genuine than it had ever been. Yeah, Dad. I am. Good. That is all I ever really wanted for you. Later that night, as Harper and I drove back to our hotel, I reflected on the journey of the past year. It had been one of the hardest years of my life. The pain of that Thanksgiving rejection had cut deep. The anger I felt when I learned about Jessica's manipulation had consumed me for weeks. The decision to set strict boundaries and conditions had gone against every instinct I had to just help and fix. But it had also been the year where I learned the most about myself and about what healthy relationships actually look like. I had learned that you cannot save people who do not want to be saved. You can offer help, you can create opportunities, you can provide resources, but real change has to come from within the person. No amount of money or intervention will fix someone who is not ready to do the work. I had learned that boundaries are not cruel. They are necessary. They protect everyone involved. They create space for genuine connection instead of resentment and obligation. I had learned that family is not about blood or history or who you share a last name with. It is about mutual respect, honest communication, and a willingness to grow. Some of the people I was closest to now were not blood relatives at all. And some blood relatives had proven they were not capable of real family connection. But I had also learned that people can change. Not everyone, not always. But sometimes, when the pain gets bad enough and the motivation is strong enough, people can look at themselves honestly and choose to be better. My parents had done that. Jessica had done that. It was slow, imperfect, and ongoing. But it was real. Most importantly, I had learned that my worth was not tied to my usefulness. I was not valuable because I could send money or solve problems. I was valuable because I existed, because I had thoughts and feelings and dreams that mattered. Dr. Chen had helped me understand that, but I had to live it to really believe it. As we pulled into the hotel parking lot, Harper turned to me. "You okay?" "You have been quiet." "Just thinking," I said, "about everything that has happened. About how different things are now. Better or worse? Different. But I think better. More honest at least." She smiled. "That is all we can really ask for, right? Honesty and effort." I thought about the text I had received from Jessica earlier in the week. It was simple. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I had replied, "Thank you for not giving up on yourself." That exchange captured everything. I had not rescued my family by giving them everything they wanted. I had not saved them by writing check after check and absorbing their problems. I had helped them save themselves by demanding accountability, by setting boundaries, by walking away when necessary, and coming back when they proved they were willing to change. Family is not about obligation. It is not about money or keeping score of who owes what to whom. Real family is about mutual respect, about showing up for each other, about being willing to have hard conversations and do difficult work. It is about recognizing when you are wrong, apologizing meaningfully, and taking action to be better. The most valuable thing I gave my family in the past year was not the $61,000 that kept them from losing everything. It was the structure and accountability that forced them to look at their choices and change. The money was gone now, spent and paid off and allocated to trusts. But the lessons remained. The changed behavior remained. The rebuilt relationships remained. That is the only currency that really matters in the end. Growth, honesty, and the choice to keep showing up, even when it is hard. I looked at the photo on my phone, the one from dinner tonight. My whole family together in my parents' small apartment, genuinely smiling. No one was performing. No one was hiding resentment. We were just people who cared about each other, trying our best, making progress. I was not the family ATM anymore. I was not the golden child or the savior or the problem. I was just Cody, a son, a brother, a partner, a friend. Someone who had learned the hard way that love requires boundaries, that help requires accountability, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away until people are ready to meet you halfway. And you know what? That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. So if you are out there dealing with family who takes you for granted, or relationships that feel one-sided, or people who only value you for what you can give them, hear this. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to demand respect. You are allowed to walk away from people who will not treat you well, even if they are family. And if they want you back badly enough, if they are willing to do the work to change, you can choose to rebuild on healthier terms. But you cannot do it for them. They have to want it themselves. Your job is not to save them. Your job is to save yourself and leave the door open only for people who prove they are worth it. That is the lesson I learned. That is what I wish I had known a year ago. And that is what I hope someone out there needs to hear today. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family or people you love? How did you handle it? What did you learn? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if it helped you think about your own relationships differently, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about navigating the complicated relationships in our lives. Share this with someone who might need to hear it, someone who is struggling with similar family dynamics. Your comment, your like, your subscription, your share, it all helps this message reach the people who need it most. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And remember, you are valuable not because of what you can do for others, but because of who you are. Never forget that. Take care of yourselves out there, and I will see you in the next one.